My name is Estar Gathu. I'm a mental health professional and a mental health advocate. I am based in the UK, and currently I am still in training to pursue a degree in mental health, but I've been practicing for the last 3 years as a mental health professional. And my day-to-day work involves working in mental health wards, acute wards for people who suffer from psychosis, or mother and baby unit where people have postnatal depression or postnatal psychosis, or forensic units where people have, because of their mental health issues, they've committed crimes, and so they have to be in a prison, but it's not a prison, it's a hospital, a ward, where their issues will be looked after. A few years ago, I did a degree in psychology, and after graduation, I worked in various hospitals, in one of the biggest teaching hospitals in the UK. For my mental health profession, I trained with King's College London. It's also one of the biggest teaching colleges in UK because it's attached to several hospitals. And before I went to King's College London University, I worked at King's College London Hospital as a research facilitator. And what that means is my job was to approve clinical trials and clinical studies for various physical health issues like renal diseases, liver cancer, cardiac diseases, or sexual health as well. And also I worked a lot on psychological studies. So it was this time when I was working in psychological studies, because part of my job involved talking to potential participants, people who would be participating in the clinical trials for psychology, while talking to them and seeing the way they deal with their mental health issues. I thought I could do well as a practitioner instead of in the backside, just doing the research. And then while I was in that job, it was a very intense environment because it's a very big hospital, and I facilitated studies for the hospital as well as the college. It was very mentally challenging for me, and other personal issues that happened during that period affected my mental health. And I was diagnosed with depression, where I had to take time off work. And during this time, because I had to access a lot of resources, go to see a therapist, go to see my doctor, I saw how there's such a big disparity between access for mental health problems for the black people versus the white people. And I thought it's to do probably with our own cultures, values and beliefs, and how we value mental health as a problem. So I thought I could do something about it. And that's how I started my website, where I raise issues about mental health to raise awareness, while educating people on how to watch out for signs or symptoms, or how to offer support to somebody who is going through something. And because of our culture and our beliefs, we don't often talk about these issues because it's still a very big taboo in our continent, in my country. And so the people I talk to, I usually talk to them through a technique, which is motivational interviewing technique, where I encourage them to talk about their problems, to tell me what their issues, how it affects the way they live, their families, their careers, their relationships, the community they live in. At the same time, because of my background and my knowledge in psychology, I'm able to know what kind of mental health problems they're going through, because most of them don't even know what they're going through, what it is. They can't put a name to it. And so it's even harder for someone to go to a doctor and tell them, I think I'm suffering from this, or even to be able to talk to anyone about it. So the stories I write on my website, they are based on real people. But for entertainment purposes, sometimes I add snippets to make the story interesting so the reader can continue reading, but I will incorporate signs of the disease, symptoms, where to get resources, how to support someone you might suspect is having any of the issues mentioned, or how to access resources and help. My website is thingsihear.co.uk. I like to think of my website as a hub where you can access anything you can imagine about mental health or mental health related issues. Usually there, sometimes I don't always write stories about people. I also write advice columns where I advise people how to optimize their mental health, things they can adopt in their day-to-day living to make their life much easier if they are going through a stressful situation, or if they're having some distress about family or relationships or work or career. And I actually did a few of those during COVID because a lot of people were working from home. There was a lot of isolation. So I would write an article giving tips and advice on how to maximize that time, look after yourself, like self-care, care for your elderly parents or young children, and how to, while you're doing all this, to look after yourself, because ultimately, if you don't look after yourself, you are not going to be able to be any good to anybody else. And some of the stories I tell on my website is about people and their mental health issues. So I'll give an example of someone going through depression, for example. When we talk about depression, obviously sometimes somebody can say to you, oh, today I'm feeling so depressed, but that is the day-to-day depressed type of situation where you're having a difficult day. Maybe your alarm didn't go off, you woke up late, everybody was late leaving the house, then you found traffic on your way, and everything spirals out of control, and your day is basically ruined, and you say, I'm feeling depressed. But the next day, you're fine because everything goes according to plan and there's nothing distressing you. But the kind of depression I'm talking about is the clinical depression. This is where someone is feeling hopeless, experiencing persistent feelings of sadness, having no hope for future, and this can go on for up to 40 days. It's a very long period of time. And usually these people would want to be isolated. They don't want to talk to anyone. They just want to stay at home, think about their problems. And the worst part about being depressed in that sense is because when they think about the past, it's usually a sort of ruminating. They're thinking about it and feeling really bad about events that they had no control over, events that they can't go back in time and change, but those events have affected something in the current situation. And the sadness is going on day after day, day after day. All they want to do is sleep, but the sleep is disturbed. You probably fall asleep for like 2 hours of this sleep, and then you'd wake up and you're just in bed restless. You have no interest in things you used to enjoy. Even if you decide, I'm going to watch a movie, you are not even paying attention to the movie because your mind, you're having racing thoughts, you're thinking of things about your situation and about situations you can't control. As a woman in this field, I can say that the challenges I've faced are diverse. And in my website, for example, when I talk to men, people who contact me and they're men, usually they are very reserved because of our culture. But I do assure people that I will maintain their anonymity. It's confidential. I never use names. I never use their place of work or where they live, even the country, because I get all sorts of people from all over Africa. I never mention the country, although sometimes when people read the story, they can think, yeah, that is something that can happen in my country. And then, so some of the issues are that is a man talking to a woman, and because of our culture and our beliefs, they feel like they are being undermined and they don't want to tell you things that can help them. They don't want to be open. And then because most of our men have been brought up with this idea that they don't have any emotions, or they're not allowed to express the way they feel, so they have those reservations because they don't want to open up too much and then get emotional. And then they don't want you to see their emotional side because they are worried you might think less of them. And also they worry about having their issues known by everybody else. In my clinical setting, I've worked in a lot of men's wards. There's a lot of abuse. Physical abuse, not physical, well, physical, but is usually resolved very quickly. But verbal abuse, because sometimes you can't stop somebody from doing that. They'll see you are a woman and they are a man, and they will want to say degrading things just to make you feel less than them, or to make them, for them to vent out their anger on you, because in their mind, you are a woman, so you are the weaker sex. You know, this notion of women are the weaker sex and men are the more advanced and stronger gender or sex, or whatever label they want to put on that. The main purpose of my website is to raise awareness about mental health. Mental health doesn't discriminate. It's like COVID. It doesn't discriminate if you're white, if you're brown, if you're black. It can affect anyone because everybody has gone through something. Everybody has gone through some trauma, and how we deal with these traumas dictates what happens in the future, whether you can develop a mental health issue or not. The problem in our society, in the black community, is because, first of all, we don't want to acknowledge that any trauma we suffered as children or young people or even as adults is trauma. We just think it's part of life and you're going to deal with it. And then because of that, you're not going to access resources that can help you cope, teach you some coping mechanisms, teach you some strategies to take, to be able to deal with the situation, or gain skills on how you can live your day-to-day life, or how you can manage the mental health problem. Because when you seek professional help, you can manage the symptoms. Sometimes some of the illnesses will need chemical medication, and if you're getting the chemical medication plus psychological interventions, this is going to equip you with skills and techniques on how you can deal with it day-to-day life. In this field is very challenging, and along the way in my training and in my own self-help research, I've found ways to help myself cope with the situation. I'll give you an example. I worked in a mother and baby unit, and there are babies, small babies, and mothers who are very distraught, who are experiencing things they don't even understand, and their babies involved. So everybody gets very emotional. And long story short, because the baby was in danger, they had to separate the mother and baby. That was the only way to make sure the mother is getting the help she needs and the baby is not at risk. And to take the baby away, they had to involve other agencies like the social services and the police. And the woman was completely distraught. She was crying like a wounded animal. And that got to me. I felt really sad because I am a mother and I know how that would feel if I'm being separated from my child. And when I talked to her, I could see it wasn't her mental illness, it was the fact that she was a mother. That's where the distress was coming from. My advice to young girls or young women who would like to join the mental health profession. It's a very challenging profession, but it's also very fulfilling. For me, I feel it's like my life purpose. And I've gone through a lot of careers, I've gone through a lot of options, I've done a lot of training, And I feel this is the right thing to do. Number one, raise awareness to make sure that everybody knows mental health problems are not unique to one set of people. It can affect anyone. And if anyone is thinking of joining the career, I would recommend them to do it. Pursue the career. You can be anything. There's so many opportunities in the mental health. You can be a therapist, you can be a mental health nurse, you can be a psychiatrist, you can be a mental health pharmacist. So you'll be able to prescribe medication for various mental health situations. And you can be a coach. But the most important thing, because of the challenges, and sometimes it gets to you, especially if you're dealing with people who are going through very severe mental health issues, you have to be able to look after yourself. So be emotionally prepared. Do things. For example, I do meditation. Meditation, I find, is a very good practice of bringing yourself to the present moment, being grateful for being alive, being grateful for your own health, physical and mental, and in every aspect of your life. And doing that way, it makes you be able to relate to people, show compassion, be kind and sympathetic. At the same time, you're able to do your job properly, because at the end of the day, you're going to ask people very difficult questions that are going to elicit a lot of emotions, and they are going to be very personal, and they are going to be problems you probably have suffered from or someone you know has suffered from. So it's going to trigger you to have some reaction. So I would suggest and recommend to people to be aware that that can happen and have a coping mechanism. That would be something internal, something you know. If I'm talking to this person who looks like my brother, or looks like my father, or looks like my son, or looks like my sister, my mom, they'll say something. For example, things like self-harm. Those are very delicate, very personal issues people go through. And when they're telling you about this, it's going to bring out your own emotions, but you still have to remain a professional. So if anyone is going through a mental health problem, or they suspect they're going through a mental health problem, or you know someone who you suspect is going through a mental health problem, I have a lot of resources on my website. You can read the stories there, and from the stories, I usually put in the symptoms, the signs, so you can tell if someone may be going through something. And then I've put resources. For now, all my resources are based in the UK, but I've tried to put some in Kenya, but usually I can't find anything, because I know this is a new thing in Kenya. It's now up and coming, and there's all these stigma surrounding mental health and taboo. So I suspect there are not very many resources, and if they are poor resources. People can't access them, or people can't get, that can't afford to access this. But we have Google. If you go into Google, for example, and type in anything, if you're feeling, I'm feeling depressed, even if you type, I'm feeling depressed, you get a lot of things coming up. Try to read something, but be careful, because Google tends to exaggerate. It tends to make the worst case scenario of anything. So be very selective and be very thorough in your search. And most importantly, seek medical help or talk to a professional. Some of the initiatives I've been involved in, apart from spreading awareness about mental health, I worked with Youth Offending Team. This is an organization in the UK where we have a group of people. We call ourselves a panel of people who help young people when they've been in the criminal justice system. Sometimes they commit a crime, but probably it's their first crime, and it's probably a minor crime, but we don't want it to escalate to something more dangerous and to make it like a career path. So when they go to court, the judge, instead of sending them to jail or giving them punishment, they'll send them to us. So when they come to us, we talk to them, find out what their passion is, what career paths they would like to follow, and how we can help them to realize their dreams. But because they've committed a crime, they still have to pay back to society, and we usually call that reparation. So we usually give them sentences. I put quotes in sentences because we don't want to think of them as a punishment. We like to think of it as a program to help you realize your strengths, realize your compassion, or increase your interpersonal skills. For example, we'll send them to food bank. Food bank is places in UK where they have people donate food, and families who are struggling would go there to get food. So if you send a young person there to be issuing the food, they would see there's another side of life. You know, there are people who can't afford even food. They have to go to the food bank so they can appreciate their situation more. And in doing that, they are not only improving their personal skills, they are also seeing and adding something to society. When I started this career, I wish someone had told me the importance of self-care, the importance of knowing what triggers you, the importance of therapy. I believe therapy for your mental health is as good as a gym for your physical well-being. You know how people go to the gym to pump up their muscles, to flatten their tummy. Therapy is that gym for your mental well-being, for your emotional health, for your psychological well-being, for your mental health. I wish someone had told me, before you embark on this career, do some therapy or equip yourself with skills of how, because you are going to deal with a diverse group of people. And in the UK, for example, I've seen white people, black people, young people, old people, men, women, name it, with issues. So I know it's not exclusive to one group of people, but I didn't anticipate the distress I was going to feel just looking at people and talking to people. So I wish somebody had told me to know about self-care. But because of my research background, I knew where to go and look for the resources. I knew where to go and read and come up with my own ways and ideas, which I like to share with people on my Instagram, on how to look about your self-care, using self-reflection, using self-assessment, and doing things that are going to improve your mental health. Eating well, getting plenty of sleep, doing relaxation techniques like meditation, saying affirmations. These are things, they may sound silly at the beginning, even for me, like meditation. The first time I tried it, I couldn't calm my mind for 10 seconds. But it's practice. I've now been doing it for 6 years, and I still can't do more than 15 minutes. 15 minutes is the maximum for me. Because your mind, you know, our minds, they wander. You start thinking other things. You start thinking of a bill you haven't paid, or you start thinking of something you plan to do. But the goal is to remind yourself, I can deal with that later. I'm here now. I appreciate this moment. I'm grateful for the air in my lungs. I'm grateful for my health. And when you start to think things like that, all the other problems seem to disappear in the background. And that's an excellent way of looking after yourself. My life purpose is to raise mental health awareness. I do this through engaging people on social media. I use my website, which I mentioned, thingsihear.co.uk. I have a contact link for anyone who would like to send me a message. I also have Facebook, is simply Estar Gathu. And I have Instagram, where I share snippets to optimize mental health, stimulate the mind. And my Instagram account is at Estar Sense. You know, like common sense, instead of common sense is Estar Sense, at Estar Sense, ESTAR Sense.